Hello and welcome to everyone in the second class of Digestion and Absorption. In our previous class, we discussed about some basics of human digestive system. Now we know the name of different organs of alimentary canal, also the name of the glands associated with digestive system. So we talked about mouth, which is the first organ of alimentary canal. Mouth leads to oral cavity or buccal cavity, which consists of teeth and tongue. So, the teeth initiates the first digestion of the food with the help of its hard surface made up of enamel. The process of breaking down of food with the help of teeth is known as mastication. The tongue is made up of muscle which helps in the movement of food and also pushes the food into the next organ, which is the pharynx. So let's talk about the next organ of the alimentary canal, that is pharynx. So pharynx is located behind the oral cavity. So just after the oral cavity in the alimentary canal, pharynx is present, which serves as a common passage for both oesophagus and trachea. Means either we are taking food or we inhale air. That means both in digestive system and respiratory system, the organ pharynx is common. After pharynx, their path separated into food pipe and windpipe. अगर हम लोग खाना खा रहे तो जो फूड है वो जाएगा pharynx के बाद food pipe में, means oesophagus में, and if we are inhaling air तब pharynx के बाद वो air जाएगा trachea में, that is windpipe. The opening of trachea means pharynx के बाद जो trachea start होगा उसका जो opening है उस portion को बोलते हैं glottis, which is guarded by a cartilaginous flap called epiglottis. Glottis is guarded by a lid-like structure known as epiglottis. So there is a specific function of epiglottis. Epiglottis prevent the entry of food into trachea. When the food travels from the mouth through pharynx, it needs to go to the food pipe, that is oesophagus. So to make sure that the food will not enter into the windpipe, epiglottis cover the windpipe, cover the opening of the trachea, that is glottis, to prevent the entry of food so that the food will go to the food pipe only. These are two rough diagrams showing the function of epiglottis. The first diagram is about epiglottis during breathing. Here you can see pharynx, which is a common organ for both digestive system and respiratory system. Just after the pharynx, their path gets separated into trachea, that is windpipe, and oesophagus, that is food pipe. So between the pharynx and trachea, there present glottis, and above the glottis, epiglottis is present. This red color structure is the epiglottis, which helps in the covering and opening of trachea. So during breathing, when we inhale air, after pharynx, the air will reach to the trachea. That's why in this case epiglottis is open. But during the swallowing of food, after pharynx, the food must go to the oesophagus. That's why in this case epiglottis close the trachea. So this is the function of epiglottis. Epiglottis, which is a cover-like structure, a lid-like structure, which closes and opens the trachea during eating the food and during inhaling the air. So जब हम लोग खाना खाते हैं तब epiglottis ट्रेकिया को क्लोज कर देता है सो दैट जो खाना है फेरिंग्स के बाद ये ओसोफेगस में जाए, ना कि ट्रेकिया पे। और जब हम लोग एयर इनहेल करते हैं तो फेरिंग्स के बाद ये ट्रेकिया पे जाएगा। इसी वजह से एपिग्लोटिस ओपन रहता है ड्यूरिंग ब्रीदिंग। नाउ let's move on to the next organ of the alimentary canal, the oesophagus. So after pharynx, the food material enter into the oesophagus, which is thin, long muscular tube that extend posteriorly, passing through the neck, thorax, diaphragm, and finally leads to the stomach. So in this diagram you can see this is the oesophagus, which is also known as food pipe, and after oesophagus the food materials get released into the next organ, that is the stomach. So the opening of oesophagus into the stomach is regulated by a valve. So every time an organ discharges its partially digested food into the next organ, they are controlled by a valve or a muscular valve known as sphincter. So in this case, the oesophagus is discharging its partially digested food into the stomach. So the sphincter which regulates the flow of the food is known as gastro-oesophageal sphincter. It is present here. You can see gastro-oesophageal sphincter. After the oesophagus, the food will enter into stomach, which is a J-shaped bag-like structure located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity. The stomach is the most dilated structure of alimentary canal. If you see all organs of the alimentary canal, the shape of the stomach is different because the internal part of the stomach is maximum among all other organs of the alimentary canal. So it is called as the most dilated structure of alimentary canal. Then after the stomach, the partially digested food will move into the next organ, that is small intestine, and the first part of the small intestine is known as duodenum. So the stomach will open into the duodenum and it is again controlled by sphincter, which is known as pyloric sphincter. This pyloric sphincter will control or regulate the flow of partially digested food released from the stomach into the duodenum. This is the figure of human stomach. You can see its J-shaped and dilated structure. The human stomach is divided into fundus, cardiac, and pyloric. The part where oesophagus releases its partially digested food is known as cardiac. Means the oesophagus opens into the cardiac of the stomach. Then the fundus, it is the upper rounded portion of the stomach, and next the pyloric, it is the lowermost portion of the stomach, which opens into the next organ of the alimentary canal, that is duodenum of the small intestine. The stomach releases its partially digested food through pyloric sphincter into the small intestine. The small intestine is the longest part of the alimentary canal, which is about 6 meters long in human being. So this is the figure of human small intestine. Here you can see after the stomach, the next organ of the alimentary canal is small intestine. So the small intestine is divided into 3 parts. The first part where the stomach releases its food is duodenum. The next part is jejunum, which is a coiled portion, and the third portion is ileum. After the ileum, the food will move to the next organ, that is large intestine. So the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine where the stomach releases its partially digested food, and it is C-shaped, widest and the shortest part of the small intestine. The next part is jejunum, means the middle part, which is about 2.5 meter long and the coiled portion of the small intestine. The third part of the small intestine is ileum, which is highly coiled and the longest portion of the small intestine. It increases the surface of the intestine so that maximum absorption of the food occurs from this region. So, the small intestine is the organ where the final digestion occurs, final digestion of food occurs, and also the absorption of food into the blood vessel occurs in the small intestine. This absorption is done with the help of small finger-like projections present in small intestine, which is known as villi. The last portion of small intestine, that is the ileum, it opens into the next portion of the alimentary canal, which is the large intestine. So thank you. We will discuss further in our next class.